Hey, I'm Abby and welcome back to the Life Work Balance YouTube channel. Today I want to share with you 5 tips on how you can calm your interview nerves or any interview anxiety that you might be feeling for an upcoming interview. Before I jump into those 5 tips, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you're looking forward to learning those 5 tips. And if you haven't already, please remember to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life work balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. When it comes to interview anxiety, the number one way for you to calm your nerves is to feel prepared. So the first thing that you have to do in order to feel calm, cool, and collected in your interview is to actually prepare for it. So even if this is your 50th interview or your first interview, the amount of preparation and the quality of preparation will significantly impact how you feel and your levels of anxiety about the interview itself. Now, I have an entire interview tips playlist that has compiled all of the videos that I've made on interview tips specifically for this situation. So if you have the time, I highly recommend that you check that playlist out. I've linked to it in the description box below. Now, while some of the videos may not apply directly to the interview that you might be preparing for right now, I highly recommend that you scroll through that list of videos and pick the videos that are most applicable to you to help you prepare. When you are prepared for an interview, you likely will feel confident in the information that you know about yourself and how it relates to the position that you applied to. And you will be able to confidently show up and demonstrate verbally how you will be the best fit for this position. Now, how do you prepare for an interview? Well, in addition to reviewing all of the videos that I have in that interview tips playlist, I highly recommend that you review the job posting or job description that you applied to. Look over the summary of the position, the key duties and responsibilities of the position. Understand the minimum qualifications and how you have those minimum qualifications. Review the preferred qualifications and highlight the preferred qualifications that you have. I also highly recommend reviewing your own resume and any other application materials that you submitted. So this might be a cover letter or your answers to any supplemental questions. Reviewing the documents that you put together for your application package will help you remember the things that you pointed out as transferable skills and experience and education that you might have as it relates to the position. Reviewing the job posting and the job description, as well as all of your application materials, will really help you feel like you have a whole idea of what the position is and how you fit into it. I also recommend, as a part of your preparation process, reviewing the organization's website and any of their social media pages. This will give you a good idea of what sorts of topics are important to them in the moment right now. And it could even help you formulate some of those important questions for you to ask at the end of your interview. So hands down, the number one way to really calm your interview nerves or any interview anxiety that you might be feeling is by preparing. You must spend quality time and put in some quality effort preparing for this interview. That might mean that you spend a couple of hours or even a couple of hours over several days preparing for this interview. The more you prepare, the more confident you will feel, and the chances of your nerves calming down and your anxiety reducing will likely be significant. When it comes to preparation, the other thing that you have to do is actually practice your responses to common interview questions. I have a list on my website of 52 behavioral-based interview questions, and I also have several videos about common interview questions that you can expect during the interview process. I highly recommend that you review those questions and you come up with your own answers to those questions in advance. When you prepare your answers to very common interview questions, you will likely encounter some of those during the actual interview. So you will be prepared to quickly respond to those questions with a well thought out, thorough yet concise response. When you're preparing your answers to interview questions, you will also be racking your brain about your experiences and your transferable skills. And just reviewing that information will help you be prepared for any questions that you may not have thought of during the preparation period. Remember to use the STAR or the CAR method to answer any behavioral-based interview questions. And if you're not quite sure what that means, I have a couple of videos for you that will help explain that concept. I've linked to those in the description box below. My second and third tips are actually more about the mindset that you can have when it comes to the actual interview process. My second tip is to think of the interview as a conversation, not as an interview. When we label our interview as a scary interview, that label just increases our anxiety and our nerves about the subject in general. However, when we think of it more as a conversation, where not only is the organization learning more about us as the interviewee, but we are learning more about the organization as a potential employer, changing the way we think about it can actually help reduce our nerves. So think about this as more of a conversation or a meeting rather than a high-stakes interview. Even if this is a very competitive job and you are one out of 100 or more interviewees, if you can think of this more as a conversation, that is one trick to help you really calm your nerves in the situation. My third tip when it comes to the mindset you have about your interview is to actually think of it as a two-way conversation and a two-way interview. They are not just interviewing you for the job and the vacancy that they have. You are also interviewing them. You have a choice in this matter. If they really like you and they offer you the job, you can choose to accept the job or you can choose to reject their offer. So this is a two-way relationship. They are interviewing you to make sure that you're going to be a good fit for the job, and you are interviewing them to make sure that the job is going to be a good fit for you, but also the organizational culture will be a good fit for you. If your senses and that gut instinct are telling you that this is not a good fit, you need to listen to it. Because chances are, if you were to accept that job and ignore those feelings, you will probably be searching for a new job in the next 6 months or less. When it comes to reducing your nerves or calming your interview anxiety, changing your mindset on how you think about the interview can be helpful. So you can think of it as a conversation, and you can also think of it as you interviewing them. My fourth tip to reducing your interview anxiety or calming your interview nerves is to actually bring some notes. I highly recommend that you bring a notebook or a padfolio with you to your interview, whether it's an in-person interview or a virtual interview. And in that notebook, you should have a couple of things written down. The first is that reminder for answering behavioral-based interview questions using the STAR or the CAR method. So have the STAR or the CAR acronym listed on your piece of paper just as a reminder for you to answer behavioral-based questions using that response type. The other things that you can write down in your notebook are the questions that you want to ask at the end of the interview. And you don't have to stop there. If you want to have some notes on some specific achievements or things that you did in previous jobs or in your previous education that relate specifically to this job, you can jot them down so that you don't forget them. If I am in an interview and I bring my notebook, I always do let the interview team know that I have a notebook where I'm just jotting down some notes as the interview process is continuing. That way, they're aware that if I am writing stuff down in my notebook, it's more as notes for myself. If we're in person and if we're on video, if they notice that my eyes have drifted away from the camera, they know why I'm not making that eye contact. So I do recommend that if you bring your notebook and you have some notes, that you let the interview team know ahead of time that you have your notebook and you're using it to jot down some notes throughout the interview process. My fifth and final tip when it comes to reducing your anxiety and your nerves in the interview process is actually a tip that you can use during the actual interview. And this is a pressure point technique. So when it comes to this pressure point technique, this is something that you can do very subtly in your chair that no one has to see. If you have been invited to an in-person interview, your hands can be placed in your lap underneath the table, and you can do this pressure point without anyone seeing. And if you're on video, your hands will likely be out of sight, so no one will even notice that you're doing it. So this pressure point is found between your thumb and your pointer finger in this fatty or muscular area. What I want you to do right now is practice this pressure point. So squeeze, using your other hand, that tissue on your hand, and you might notice instant relief. So while you're sitting in an interview or any other anxiety-provoking situation, you can remember that pressure point technique. When you do that pressure point technique, it will help center you and bring you back to the present. It will hopefully help slow you down and calm you down, and will help you be more effective in whatever situation you're in. So those were my 5 tips to help you calm your interview nerves or calm your interview anxiety. One of the questions that I have received is it okay to tell the interviewers that you're nervous? I would say yes. It is perfectly acceptable to tell the interviewers that we're nervous. We are all human. We all have moments of anxiety, nervousness, and stress. However, my word of warning and my caution against sharing this information is that if you verbalize it in the interview, it might make you actually more anxious than you were before you shared that information. And by pointing it out and highlighting that you're nervous, it could really put a spotlight on your nerves and your nervous behavior for the interviewers. So while it is okay and acceptable to share with the interviewers that you are nervous, I would recommend against doing it because verbalizing it can make you even more stressed and nervous, and it can really highlight any of your nervous behaviors to the interviewers. Instead, I would recommend using that pressure point technique I shared as tip number 5, preparing for your interview before the interview, and changing your mindset around the interview. Thinking of it more as a conversation and you interviewing them than a high stakes interview that you could potentially blow. So with that being said, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. And if you have any comments or things that have worked for you in the past to calm your nerves, please go ahead and drop them in the comments box below. I love receiving comments. I look at each of them that comes through and I respond to them all individually. So if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas, drop them in the comments box below and I'll get back to you as quickly as I'm able. Again, if you haven't already, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell so that you can receive life, work, balance advice delivered directly to you every Sunday. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.